Great. So yeah, I'm gonna start, I guess, just by saying welcome everybody. It's really exciting to see how many folks showed up for this offering. We had like 25 registrations in the last 24 hours. So welcome. Didn't know how many people were gonna come, but it's really exciting to see that the people are interested in this content. It's something that myself and a lot of the other people kind of close to Dharma Gates are like constantly in process around is this topic of actually applying the Dharma or spiritual practice to our lives, to our work, relationships, all this stuff that is deeply meaningful and relevant for most of us. So I'm going to just say a little bit about Dharma Gates and the kind of context for this project, who we are. And we're going to then go into some breakout rooms so people have a chance to introduce themselves a little bit in a little bit of a smaller group, share some intentions and kind of what brought you here. Because too many in this whole group, I think. But everybody will have the chance to meet one another through the optional discussions and through the rest of the kind of course. And then we'll move into some relational practices with Miles here, who's so I guess I'll just share a bit about Dharma Gates now. So my name is Aaron. I am one of the founders. We have two other of the founders on the call. Miles and Nikki helped me start this project. We're about 4 years into the Dharma Gates being a thing. And the core mission is to help young practitioners, 18 to 35 is our usual age range, connect to Buddhist teachers, communities, retreats, practice opportunities that can really meet them in their interest, their aspiration to explore, Buddhist practice and spiritual life more generally. So we want to help connect people to resources. Really, there's a lot out there that I didn't know about when I was 18, and it's really completely changed my life learning about the places to go, the people you can practice with, the guidance and support that's out there. And I was introduced to kind of the world of meditation through the yoga tradition in 2016. I took some time off in college, went to India for a short several month trip, and became familiar with this whole kind of landscape of the Dharmic traditions. And then encountered Zen in college through a friend and started visiting a number of different Zen communities through the rest of college. And that led to this kind of idea as a senior of helping to get this organization going to help make this accessible to other people. So that's to say that my practice background is in the Zen tradition mostly, some in kind of Theravada Buddhism. I've had a good number of retreats in those lineages. I don't consider myself, I'm not a Dharma teacher, but I'll be helping to kind of hold this container for this time. And maybe the other Dharma Gates folks could raise your Zoom hands or literal hands. So we have Sydney, Gabe, and BI will also be Dharma Gates kind of representatives here. They'll be in most of the kind of main sessions on Saturdays, and then also we'll have at least a couple of us and Nikki. Nikki we haven't talked as much about, but Nikki will be participating too, and possibly helping to facilitate if he's around for that. And we'll be so we'll have a few of us on the calls in the kind of optional sessions and helping to kind of like create some container outside of the main sessions with our facilitators. And I guess a little bit more, so a lot of the logistics and the context for this was sent out in a kind of group email. Everybody should have gotten an email that says welcome and course information, and hopefully not multiple. We are having some issues with our emailer, but I think it's all resolved. So if you didn't get that email, just reach out and let us know, and we can make sure you have it, and that'll give a kind of the Slack invitation, when to meet invitation, all that stuff. Please do fill that out. Please join the Slack. That's going to be helpful for us in getting things moving next week. And yeah, for now, I guess I'll just say a couple more things about the kind of impetus for this course before handing it to Miles. So, we've seen, we've worked with a lot of young people in the last few years. We're approaching like 1,000 total people that have come to all of our programs, which is pretty exciting. And talk to a lot of people. I do a lot of advising, so kind of one-on-one calls with people, helping them find practice opportunities that are a good fit for them. And it just seems like across all these experiences, the question of like, yeah, it's great to go on retreats. It's great to meditate a lot. Buddhist practice is extremely helpful for certain ways of, resolving suffering, cultivating compassion, learning how to show up in the world. But also the actual process of bringing that practice into our lives, into our relationships, our career, is extremely variable. So many people everybody has their own different answer to that. And most people aren't going to go be monks. They aren't going to kind of completely make their whole life into this kind of meditation practice. And so there's the necessity of becoming skillful in the domains of relationships, of money, of career, and especially for young people who are practicing, these questions are like front and center in our lives. We can't avoid them, and they're very important. And so I've also met some people over the last few years who've been really like kind of blown open my expectations about how it's possible to engage. And I think that's part of what's been why I wanted to create more space. We wanted to create space for people to really learn from each other. I wanted to share a couple examples of people that I met. So there's one in particular that's come to mind as a person I met through the Zen community here in New York that I've been practicing with, who he got interested in meditation in his 20s, and because of that, he was in med school, and he ended up specializing in a track where he could work a kind of intensive 7-day shift, like 12 hours a day, and then he would have a week off, and he would set up his life so he was doing week-long meditation retreats in between his shifts. And so somehow holding this really intense kind of like classically like high performing successful career, and also managing to really dedicate himself to meditation in a way that I'd never seen someone who was kind of doing that. And it just kind of opened my mind a little bit to what was possible. I also met someone at a retreat not too long ago who was a national park ranger and would spend her kind of off-season months on retreat, or a substitute teacher at a monastery in Oregon who, I guess it's pretty easy to get positions as a substitute teacher. So he would do a season, a semester at a school somewhere, and then he would spend some time in retreat or something like that. So let's just say there's all of these creative arrangements that are out there, and there's a lot of this kind of gray area or room for exploration and creativity in between how we think of like the monk on the mountaintop and the kind of straight and narrow conventional life. And so yeah, we wanted to create a space where people could really learn from each other and share about what's going on in their lives and in their kind of relationship to practice, and kind of brainstorm, consider how to move forward. And all of our staff, this is like live inquiry, none of us are like figured everything out here. And I think even that's true for all of the facilitators and teachers we've invited for the Saturday sessions. This is every life seems to be some expression of some way of answering this question, and there's not no outcome you're supposed to arrive at. I really hope it's the process and the discussion that might be fruitful. And yeah, so I guess we'll hand it to Miles, and we'll move into some breakouts in a minute, so you can have a chance to share some intentions, kind of what you're bringing to this offering. And just a last reminder on the logistical note. So the main things that, if you haven't done them yet, are the when to meet. So that is to find the optional discussion section time that works for most people. And we're going to be holding that every week. And that will really just be a space so that, you know, some of the main sessions will be more content based and hopefully a good amount of practice too. But in the optional sessions, you'll really get the chance to actually meet the other participants and also learn, you know, learn how others are thinking and feeling about this stuff. There's also a Slack invitation, so encourage you to join the Slack if you haven't. And if you have any ideas for new channels or new kind of subtopics within the Slack, just let us know. We just kind of put some things out there, and you're welcome to engage with all of that. And yeah, there'll also be pre-retreat or pre-session readings going out, and talks, and just various forms of content. Those shouldn't be like super intensive, and if you can't do it, you know, it's okay, but it'll deepen the session. And I think everybody's engagement, if we as many of us as possible actually engage with that stuff before the material. And we're choosing it because we think it's really good. It's like some of our favorite stuff and some of our facilitators' favorite kind of Dharma teachers' reflections on how to live. So hopefully it'll be enjoyable too. And yeah, if you haven't paid a deposit, please do. I think we're going to raise the cap. We were thinking 30 at first. We might raise it to 40 or so total participants, but that's just to kind of create a coherent through line, hopefully. So we have a sense of how many people are really like committing to the whole course. And that's really, really helpful. All right, so I guess I'll say a couple words about Miles. He's over here. And then we'll go into breakouts. But Miles helped start Dharma Gates way back in the day, and I think we had a lot of shared kind of vision for the project on the basis of his background and my background. I was in college, and he had spent about 5 years after college doing full-time sort of contemplative practice in Asia, and a couple years of long solitary retreat in the US, and just resonating deeply with the importance of these practices in you know, affecting the world, and also just leading everybody and ourselves in the direction of well-being. And so I guess I'll give it to you, Miles, to let you do a little bit more intro, and also if you want to I can create the breakout rooms at whatever signal you want.
Great, thanks. We'll do the breakout room at the intention ones at the end. I think it'll flow a bit better if we do practice and then wind up with them. Can you hear me? My AirPods are working. Show of hands. Okay, good. Yeah, how to live well. Sort of seems difficult to talk about that without being a pretentious person. So I think what I'm going to do is focus on one of the very few things that I feel extremely confident about. And so there's this on the cushion, off the cushion business of like, you're doing something on the cushion, you're meditating, learning certain skills, and then the rest of your life happens. Hopefully by the end of this, there is maybe a lot less difference between those two states as there might at first appear to be. So as Aaron said, I spent a lot of my 20s in full-time meditation retreat. I came out of college and I was very inspired, particularly by a Tibetan teacher, B. Alan Wallace. I did a few years of solitary retreat with him, and then a few years of different monastic style training in Asia and in the United States. And I came out of that which in the grand scheme is, you know, like meditation. And one of the things I found pretty quickly when I got back to living in New York and was trying to have a life, you know, romantic partnership, job, school, the whole thing, is that it was upsetting how brittle my practice seemed to be, how often I felt confused, or like I had been in one world in the mountains of New Mexico, and now this was a totally different world, and the things that I'd been doing over here didn't seem to relate to what I was doing over here. And one of the biggest missing pieces I started to realize in the education that I'd been through was how to be with people. Because it's one thing to sit down and be with yourself and a million acres of national forest, and that's one kind of process and one sort of skill set. But being with people, which is a big part of most of our lives, ends up being a somewhat different skill set. So that's what this whole set of practices we're about to do is going to be about, is this process of how to be with people. Great. What I found particularly helpful was a whole network of practices that fits under the umbrella of interpersonal meditation. So these are ways to formally turn life into practice. In particular, as we, sorry, it's just tripping me out how many, like, seems like there was a couple people started turning off their screens, and then like a lot of people started turning off, and then it became the norm. So
I told people to do it to help with the connection, because it made your quality a little better. But
oh, did it?
we can go back in a minute.
I was like, what happened? was this something I said? So I'm at the Zen Center right now with Aaron. Apparently, Buddhists don't believe in paying for good Wi-Fi. I'm very sorry. So yeah, if you can turn back on your things. I'll take these out. Maybe that won't help at all. Anyway, yeah, so the things I really want to talk about in particular that often get missed in meditation circles and that are critical to bringing it into real life are trauma and triggers and emotional freedom. So when I say trauma, I'm not just talking about like war and huge kinds of massive traumas that exist, but really any unprocessed experience. So anytime that you meet some experience in your life, maybe you're very little, maybe you're an adult, whatever it is, for whatever set of reasons, the circumstance is overwhelming in some way. And instead of just experiencing it and having it move through, we get tight in some way or other. Maybe we hold our breath, maybe we go into thinking, maybe we clench our heart, who knows? We do something to not feel. And then what this creates is that later on, something might happen. Maybe you're in a romantic partnership, something's said, and there's a trigger, which basically just means whatever happens is way out of context to what just happened. So you think you're responding to one thing, maybe something somebody said, but in fact, you're actually like way, way back in your historical timeline. Maybe you're 3 years old and you're actually responding to your mother or to your father or to a kid who bullied you, whatever it is. And the reason that I think trauma and triggers are such a wonderful thing to start focusing on is because in relating to people, they almost inevitably come up. And if we're trying to pretend they're not there, or if we're unable to have a sensitivity of awareness that's refined enough to feel them, then life itself is gonna sort of seem dry and confusing. Versus if we can actually bring like a deep awareness to these things, then they become an opportunity for learning. So part of why I fell so deeply in love with interpersonal meditation, and very soon we're going to break out and get to actually try it out, and I think that's where a lot of the juice is going to come in, is because I found it was helping all these other areas of my life to go better. work stuff, friendships, romance, family, all of it, like the interpersonal meditation started giving me tools that I felt I could use in those circumstances. But then another thing started happening that made it like particularly compelling, which was the rest of my life then became a learning ground too. So it wasn't only like I was practicing interpersonal meditation and then that was making, work go better, but that then I could go into conversations with Erin, for example, and, we have like a challenging thing come up. And that itself could be this kind of like fascinating experience that would then feed back into the practice of interpersonal meditation. And on top of that, I was still doing like silent meditation too. So I found that the more I began to use relationships as an opportunity for practice, it actually made my silent practice like way richer and more interesting. And I think that a lot of the silent, like year-long meditation retreats I'd done, there were certain parts of myself that had remained walled off and shut away and distant. And that through using relationship, I began to get closer to myself. And that just made my own solitary practice like way richer, way softer, way more interesting. And then the solitary practice that I was doing, I was noticing was having effects on the interpersonal. So it was interpersonal meditation affecting the interpersonal dynamics in my life and vice versa. And it was solitary practice affecting the interpersonal and vice versa. And it started to become this very rich kind of dense weave. So my intention with the practices I'm about to share is to open that world. I know some of you have already explored it. A lot of you probably haven't, but start to open that kind of way of practicing. Great. So we are going to split into dyads. Erin, were you able to create that list?
I think we just go with plan B.
Plan B. Okay, great. So everyone is going to need to be on camera for this. So go ahead and turn your camera on. Okay. And then randomly select someone and pin their screen. Right, you all know how to do that. If anybody is struggling or confused, raise your hand or just say something. Okay, so I'm going to assume everybody's got someone else pinned. Yeah? Beautiful. So now we're going to practice meditating, but with this person. And then go ahead and just come into your body. So start to feel what it's like to be you right now. And as you feel your body, you can let your mind settle. So within your body, you'll find that you're breathing and your breath has its own rhythm. Connecting to that rhythm and then allowing that rhythm to wash your mind clean of all the thoughts, the memories, the hopes. When you get distracted, come back to the feelings in your body, come back to the feeling of your breath. And then as you're feeling your body and your breath, you'll also notice within your body, there's this subtle layer of emotionality. So it's like a little more refined than the physical body, the sense of your emotions as they're experienced directly by you right now. Some kind of surge or tension or opening or fizzing. Or you could feel blank or numb. So simultaneously attending to your physical body and to your breath and to these emotions that are coursing through you, and allowing yourself space for them to be exactly what they are. And then opening your eyes if they're closed and taking a look at this other person who is pinned in front of you. And continuing to feel you as you look at them, as you stay connected to them. So on the one hand, you're allowing them into your field. You're noticing their expression, their eyes, their breathing. You're connected to them, and you're deeply connected to yourself. But continuing with that first step we took of knowing what's happening in your own breathing, in your own emotions, and allowing them to be exactly as they are. So let's say you look at this person, maybe you feel some things you want to feel, maybe you feel some things you don't want to feel, or you think you shouldn't feel. Kind of letting that whole mental layer fade and being with this more honest reality of what you do feel. And just as though you were practicing mindfulness of breathing, whenever your mind wanders, you start making up a story about them, thinking about what you're going to do after this, and just bring it back, settle in your own system, open to include an awareness of them, and just rest right there. This gets particularly interesting when you stop trying to make your experience different. If you feel angry, let yourself feel angry. If you feel bored, let yourself feel bored. If you feel deep love, let yourself feel deep love. Just if you feel absolutely nothing, let yourself feel absolutely nothing. So you're tracking your own experience of this more and more refined, more and more spacious awareness. Okay. And you can silently thank this person, whoever they are. And just so you get a sense of how different everyone is, go ahead and randomly pin someone else. Then do the same thing, like settle into yourself, thinking kind of turns down, feeling turns up. It's like as though you're at a wine tasting or I don't know, something where you'd be sampling different flavors at the ice cream shop, getting the samples. So just feel what it's like now to be with this person. Is this the same? Is this a little spicier or sweeter or scarier? Or do you go blank here? And without making up any story about why any of that happens, just let yourself feel with deep refinement, with profound spaciousness, what it's like to be with this person moment by moment. Feeling maybe that when you kind of enter this space of non-suppression and non-indulgence of emotion, there's actually like a peace that can start to come with it. Even if activation spikes, like some type of fear or boredom, something kind of spikes, there's this like space around it. And then again, kind of thanking this person for their presence, And go ahead and go into the viewing mode up in the upper right-hand corner where you can see many boxes. It's the gallery view. And now we're gonna do the same thing one last time, but this time instead of feeling yourself in the context of this one person, it's like 25 people or however many people fit on a screen. And let your eyes kind of open to see lots of faces. So like you'll notice if someone stretches or yawns or blinks or moves around or is very still, you can just kind of sense all that at the same time. And then feel yourself, body, breath, emotions, while staying connected to 25 other people. So the sense of being in a group, and then track that over time. So stay with yourself as your experience moves. Okay. So pretty soon we're gonna have an opportunity to actually unpack this a little bit together and share some reflections, feedback. I'm excited to get other voices coming in. But before we do that, we're gonna do one more exercise. Aaron, if you can start prepping groups of about 4, that would be great. So we're going to go into breakout rooms, and it's very, very simple. It's so simple that some people might struggle to do it. I really encourage you to keep the container here. There's like a method to the madness. Basically, what you're going to do once you get in the breakout room is for 1 minute, you can just say hi, and then I'll write in the chat, and that means everybody gets quiet. And once everybody gets quiet, you're going to do the exact same thing we were just doing, where you're paying attention to yourself while looking at the group. And then you're going to go in an order, and you'll figure out the order very quickly because you'll establish an order, and then you'll keep going in that order. The order doesn't matter. There's going to be many rounds. And each person's going to just say 1 to 3 words about how they are right now. So for me, Aaron, you want to demonstrate this together? I can't hear you.
I'm making breakout rooms, maybe.
Oh, yes. Sydney, would you like to demonstrate this together?
Sure.
Okay. So, hey, Zuck, you're going to join us too.
Sure.
So 1 to 3 words. If that's confusing, just do 1. You don't need to make sense. Something about your experience right now. So this could be angry, happy, buzzing, numb, hot, confused, blank, anything. You're just going to say one thing about your experience. Then the next person is going to say something. And after each person speaks, the group's just going to rest with them for a moment or two. Just feeling, okay, they said something, really trying to feel them in that moment, trying to get an actual sense of what it might be like to be them, just through that basic connected human monkey thing that we do, where we're somehow able to look at someone and simultaneously know things about their inner experience. And then the next person goes. And we keep like a nice kind of pace, not too slow, not too fast. So Sydney, take us away.
Eating.
And we'll do Sydney, Zuck, Miles, and we'll do a couple counts.
Half with it.
Dazed.
Smile.
Joy.
Bright.
Slipping.
Okay.
Okay, you guys get that? Any practical questions about what this breakout room is going to look like or not look like, or how to do it? Thanks, Sydney and Zach, too. Yeah. So the key, stay with your own experience. Let it be exactly what it is. You're going to say 1 to 3 words. Pause for a beat or two. Everyone in the group's going to kind of like tune in to that person, but not an oppressive long pause. Then the next person, and you're just going to go like that. So breakout rooms, feel free to say hi, 1 or 2 minutes. I'll send a message. When you get that message, settle into this rhythm. Again, any questions whatsoever? Okay, cool. If you do end up with some, I think there's a way to raise your hand in a breakout room, and me or someone else on my team will come by. So see you back here in like about 10 minutes. Oh, and again, like the more you let your experience actually be what it is, rather than what you think maybe I think it should be, or something like that. Like if you're bored, be bored. If you're pissed, be pissed. If you're elated, be elated. Just like opening to the honesty of what your experience is. Okay, let's see you soon. Welcome back. So there's going to be some time now as a full group to unpack a little bit. I guess we've done 3 exercises so far. There was the just feeling into our own experience. There was that thing where we were pinning random people, or then where we paid attention to the whole group while paying attention to our own experience, all of that in silence. And then there was this group of 4 or so, where you're practicing sharing in real time what was going on and being with a group. So what's coming up? What are you noticing that feels significant or alive or important about that experience? Yeah, Chris.
Can you hear me? Yeah, so I think with the pinning exercise, what really stood out to me was I didn't know who my partner was. I usually do the things where like I actually know who I'm like looking at, but with the Zoom feature, like I was like curious, like who's pinning me, and like would it be okay if I were to pin that other person and they don't know about it? And so there's these like things that like these I don't know, these conscious like setting up interaction things that were going through my head as I was doing this. And then when I was doing it, it was a sort of yeah, because they don't know it's like how like what is forming, and I don't know the answer to that question because there's nothing established there. So I was playing that like the sort of like typical like being together people kind of protocols.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many different formats to do this in. And then, when we're in a digital format, that affects it a lot. But a lot of these questions, it sounds like around like, oh, like who knows what and what's appropriate and what's like what's going on. Oh, really interesting to notice that. Thanks for sharing, Chris. Sarah.
Hey, thank you. I was really struck by when you, like, by allowing myself to pay attention to what arises, there was almost like the chart, and what having you in the background name it kind of like affirmed, like it's okay to feel it. But like the spike of new person, are they seeing me? I found for me, it was a lot more of my own insecurity and vulnerability that arose. And then there was a connection of, okay, I'm like relaxing. I'm with this. We're like, I'm feeling seen. And I think some of that is in really allowing myself to like see and be with the other person and finding that tempo. At one point wondering like, okay, are we on even the same breathing track? Because that person is probably looking at someone else. And then I found myself at one point kind of leaning into like the loving kindness, like a little meta practice for them. And all of a sudden it turned into we, like, may we like be at ease. And that was really cool. And that was right before you switched it or had a switch. And then it was like, I was like, I'm going to just keep that going. And then it like fell off in that new person, like new movement, new connection to establish. And what you said initially about how we take this, like relationships are an opportunity for practice. Like the prompt for me was like, well, at the end, how do I allow myself to notice those things in all of the relationships I enter into? Because it's such a powerful experience to not have the volume on everything else turned up so loud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be. I mean, your share just points to like how much is going on in sort of like even this like this interaction where you don't even know if the person who you're looking at is probably not looking at you. Odds are bad, not impossible, but odds are bad that they're looking at you and you're looking at them. And even that, all the things that just start going on. And you kind of snuck to the end of the textbook there with the metta practice. So we are gonna be bringing a little bit of metta or loving kindness practice in at the end. And I think there can be this really interesting thing of taking time to be with ourselves in a totally non-suppressive way before applying the metta lens, so that like loving kindness doesn't override our ability to actually feel ourselves honestly. Thank you so much, Sarah, for your share. Anyone else, this little harvest here, like insights that came up or question? Yeah, hey, hi, Thumb. Oh my God, there's some old school characters around. Oh,
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, hey Miles, hey Aaron, hey everybody. Happy to be here. Sorry I joined late. So the only exercise I got to experience was the call that we had in the breakout room. And the experience I had was more like, how I would describe it is, it felt like we had a collective painting and each person was kind of like dropping a color. Some colors bright, some colors are dark. And it felt like I had this desire, oh, I want the painting to be beautiful. So like maybe I should balance it with more bright color here if it's getting too dark or something like this, like kind of trying to balance it like a gyroscope in a way to sort of, because the whole experience get colored by some emotion sometimes. But yeah, and I was questioning, am I here to be seen, to see others, or for mutual seeing? That was the question that I had. Like, is it bad to feel like you want to be seen? Is it better to only show up just to see the other? Is it appropriate if we can both see one another? And that's the question that I left with.
Mm. What I'm struck from that share and from actually all of the shares thus far, which is one of the reasons that I love these kinds of practices, is how much is going on all the time, right? Like even in this super simple kind of contrived whatever, there's like, how should I be? How should you be? How are you thinking about me? Like, am I doing the right thing? Like, what is the thing I want to be doing? Like, what am I feeling? And in normal social interaction, on top of this like layer that's happening all the time, there's also like trying to get things done together, or wanting something from someone, or, you know, like this whole layer of like, getting things done, I would call it. So it can be really amazing to take time and have the space to break interaction down to some of its more constituent parts, kind of like slow it down and break it down enough that you can really like catch some things that otherwise are like impossible to catch in real time. Okay, so time is absolutely flying, and there's one more exercise I really want to all do together. We're going to do this in partners. It's called What's That Like? Or at least that's what I call it. So basically what this exercise is designed to do is to give us a route for going deeper into our experience. And this is one of the reasons that interpersonal meditation is powerful. And one of the opportunities that starts to become available throughout all interaction is like, on the surface, one thing's happening. Maybe you're angry. Okay, if you stay with that experience, that's actually like this incredibly rich, multifaceted experience. Or maybe you feel awkward. You know, I feel a little awkward right now. Okay, if I could pause with that, that is fascinating. So here we're going to basically support each other in diving deeper into our experience. So we're going to each have about 3 minutes to support our partner, one-on-one, in kind of splunking into the cave of their experience. So let's say, Nikki, you down to demo this here?
Sure.
Okay. So the question that's being asked by the questioner or by the inquirer is, what's it like to be you right now? And you just keep asking either that question or what's that like? I'm going to ask it, and then Nikki can say whatever he wants, or you can say nothing at all. There's never like, you don't need to share. You don't need to like share some deep, dark, vulnerable thing. You share it like your own level. But if he feels inspired, then he answers the question of what's happening in his direct experience, staying away from thinking. So more like kind of settling into the body and the emotional experience. The exercise tends to be a lot juicier if we go that way. And he'll say just a little bit about it, even just a word or two, maybe a sentence or two. Then we kind of pause together, and then I ask the question again. And maybe the same thing comes up for him, maybe a totally different thing. Maybe his experience radically changes. Maybe he just gets more refinement on that. But whatever it is, we keep following the thread of his current experience. So, Nikki, what is it like to be you right now?
I feel some amount of nervousness.
What's that like?
I feel it like underneath my heart and my chest area. I feel like some fluttering almost, or something like this, or tightness, but also fluttering.
What's that like?
I noticed it became less intense as I speak about it. And it's like moving into like the outside of my arms, kind of, my hands, like the same energy, but it's like now more there in the arm region. And
So that's it. It's going to be like that for 3 minutes. We'll let you know when to change. So one person, what's it like to be you right now? What's that like? And every time, like before you ask the question, so the inquirer is also in your own experience. It's not like just the other person is curious about their experience. You're still like in your own, sitting there, being, listening, opening yourself as you're listening. And then wait until like a genuine kind of curiosity arises. Ask the question from there, let them speak, let it marinate for at least a few moments, and then again. So super simple. What's it like to be you right now? What's that like? 3 minutes each. We'll let you know when to switch. Any questions about how this is going to work? Okay. Good luck exploring out there. See you in like 6 minutes. Okay. We are very, very close to 3:30. I'd love to open it back up again for any last reflections about either that last exercise or just what from this you feel like you might be able to or want to use in your life, like that, bridging it into life. So what do y'all got? I know. Yes. Michaela.
Sorry, I didn't know that was to the whole group, but I could share. That's so funny. I'll say I noticed that in the first group, I was feeling a lot of like grumpy, tense, angry feelings. And I was like, okay, I was trying to accept that. And I was like, okay, I guess this will be my experience. And I'll sort of like stay with that and just be curious about it. And then when we went into the one-on-one groups, I had just kind of like an energy and a lightness come over me. And as I like spoke about it, it sort of like transformed and it kind of like blossomed from there. And I couldn't stop laughing and I didn't know where it was coming from, but it was like really sweet and cute. And I just kind of was like, wow, the human experience is so crazy and constantly changing. And so that was cool for me.
Crazy. Yeah, another way to maybe name this practice. Anything else? Last couple of shares.
One thought, I always am surprised, like every time there's an exercise like this or like a certain prompt, I'm like, surely I won't feel like that heard by something that I know someone has to say. No offense to the technique, but then every time it works. Like active listening, it's just so powerful when you feel another person's presence. And I was paired with Andrew, and he just had such a way of like saying the same question but like with the specific intonation that just like made me feel so heard and comfortable going deeper into my experience. So thank you, Andrew. And yeah, just continually surprised by the power of dyad sharing and active listening. Yeah.
It's amazing, the simple things, right? And then that art of subtlety, like actually when you do get trapped by an exercise, sometimes it just brings out like, wow, the way someone says something really matters. one or two last reflections. Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, I'm just glad I get to reveal parts of myself without getting advice, because I think sometimes I just want people to listen as opposed to just give me advice. I can work these things out myself. I just need that space, and this is a great practice to do that, to give people space. So thanks.
Yeah, certainly. Really being clear with ourselves and others, like when we want advice and when we just want some presence or something else, go a long way. I'm glad you got a bit of it here. One more.
I really enjoy this practice, Miles, and getting into my experience with my emotions and feelings. It's really valuable. So I feel super grateful.
So that's kind of a whirlwind overview of like a really big, really juicy, important element of practice that I think can often get overlooked. And if we had a whole day together or like a 8-week series, we could keep refining and adding in new exercises, building on the stuff we've learned. Hopefully, though, this starts to give you a little bit of a taste of like, wow, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on when it comes to being with other people. And there are ways to start to bring more awareness into that field. Part of what I think is so juicy and compelling about this is that when we interact with people in this kind of more direct way, it will often bring up like old unprocessed experience. It will, we will meet triggers, we will meet traumas. And when we do that, we also have the opportunity to learn about ourselves in really profound ways. So starting to develop this capacity for spacious presence with ourselves and with others, I think goes a long way to bringing the practice into relationship. And then also, I imagine that if you spend time doing this, you will find that that's also going to come back and really richen and deepen what you're finding on the cushion. Like for me, it was only after starting to find like feelings in the context of other people that I could even begin to identify them when I was sitting on my own. And what that created was just a more and more spacious, open, actually like interesting and dynamic practice. So thank you so much for your time, putting aside time on a Saturday to explore how to live a better life is just a beautiful thing. And I know Aaron's put together like a pretty amazing group of people, at least the other ones who are going to come for the next 7 weeks. So I hope you get to learn a lot in that, and that learning is valuable for your life. And that you get to know each other better and better as kind of a cohort and a group, and that something really richens and deepens with that. So yeah, thank you for your engagement and your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. I have a couple things to say before some people might start hopping off, but just so as we transition, I touched on a lot of the logistics, but I just wanted to remind folks. So if you're not in the Slack, please join the Slack. If you didn't get the kind of welcome course overview email, let us know. We've attempted to send that out to everybody who registered, but if you haven't found it, sometimes our emails go to spam or promotion, so you can go track it down, and please move it back into your inbox. It's good for the algorithm. And the other thing is there's a when to meet, so we'll have optional kind of discussion groups every week, and the intention is to really try to bring a little bit of the relational kind of interpersonal meditation to those, so it's not just like in too much in the head. It'll be really good to have that space, I think, to dive a bit deeper. And we will also be posting the readings, recommended Dharma talks, things like that in the Slack. So you can find them there. probably send them out via email too, but that's the kind of overall gist of the main offerings for the course. So make sure to be aware of all that. Other than that, thanks everybody for coming. We're at 3:30, so we'll plan to see you. I'll send out the announcement for the time for the optional sessions on Sunday. So see you then. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye, Jane.
Bye.